It's time for Democrats to learn how to speak like normal people. And to join me for that conversation is my good friend Cam Kasky. Cam, how you doing?
Hey, everybody. Andy Beshear, who's very much in the conversation for President of the United States in 2028, went on a little bit of a monologue about why we maybe ought to think more about how hard we're thinking about our language. Let's take a look.
It's a little bit of the advocacy speak, and it was meant for the right reasons. Right? It was meant to decrease stigma, but we don't decrease stigma by changing words. We decrease stigma by changing hearts. And when we start changing and sanitizing our language, things have less meaning. And I'll give you an example that's personal to me. In Kentucky, we are hit by the opioid crisis harder than just about any other state. Every Kentuckian, including myself, knows about a dozen people that are no longer with us. A child of God taken far too soon. I didn't lose one of my friends to substance use disorder. I lost them all to addiction. Addiction is mean. It's nasty. It's hard to beat. It kills people. And when you lose somebody, when you talk about losing them to addiction, you feel it. But how about the other side? When someone triumphs over addiction, they've beaten something that is so hard and so deadly, it gives them the triumph that they deserve. And because we've approached it that way in Kentucky, thank God we saw a 30% decrease in drug overdose deaths last year.
Now, there's more to that clip, but I think we should stop it there because there's quickly just something that I want to say. There are so many, and not to attribute the moderate label to Andy Beshear, because he's acted in a very progressive way as governor of Kentucky. Let's be real here. But so often moderates say what Democrats should be doing. Democrats have to be doing more of this. And, I could find a couple examples, but they say we need to change the way that we speak. We need to broaden the tent. They give instruction without giving or showing action. This clip went really, really viral because it is a critique of what Beshear called activism-speak, but I think is more like intellectual speak, and the way that we change words to suit feelings. But he's actually doing the work of communicating that. And he goes into detail of why it is so important that we do. But I just want to point out that this is completely different than critiques we often see from the center of the left that fail to offer up any actual action. It's just, ooh, I think you're wrong.
It's always woke has gone too far. Mm-hmm. And there's truth to that, and there's silliness to that. And the problem is that if you ask 5 different people what woke means, you get 5 different answers. To some people, wokeness is when a black woman gets cast as a Disney princess. To other people, wokeness is the idea of advocating for other people in this world to be treated more equitably. For other people, wokeness is the performance that you are acting towards people being treated more equitably without actually putting your money where your mouth is. When I say woke, so often what I mean is like performative. And if somebody's being woke, what they're doing is they're using language to make it seem like they are trying to be more positive than they actually are. But then other people, woke is just when you are nice to a gay person, and woke is when black people exist. So when people say woke has gone too far, it's very important for us to figure out what it is exactly that they mean. I texted my friends in my group chat of sort of my chill friends who aren't really that into politics, but sort of keep an eye on it. I sent them this clip of Beshear because it was interesting to me, because this is a group chat where we use words like the word that I would never say, which is the retarded word, and things like that. And a buddy of mine who seemingly has leaned more right lately said he doesn't really go after woke language. He said, don't say food insecurity.
And he speaks more about the problem with using words like food insecurity right here.
Another example. That big ugly bill is not only going to gut rural health care and hit our rural economies, it's going to decrease food assistance all over this country. We're not going to be able to change and push back on that if we say it's going to increase food insecurity. What it's going to do is make people go hungry. They're going to feel hunger pains at night when they go to bed, and hunger pains when they wake up in the morning. And remember, the 2 groups most at risk for hunger, and the 2 groups covered by Medicaid the most, are our parents and our kids. We even have a new term that we're being pushed to use now. It's called justice-involved populations. Y'all know what that is? Those are our inmates. And I'm working on reducing recidivism as much as any governor in the nation. The Bible teaches me that second chance aren't just the right thing to do, they're what we're called to do. We're teaching a trade in every single Kentucky prison and trying to help people get good jobs as they leave. But you know what our inmates call themselves? Inmates. And so we've got to make sure that the ways that we're communicating as public officials and as folks that are running are the same ways you talk to your friends or your family, that our words have meaning and emotion behind them.
And so what he said about food insecurity, I think is so important because he essentially, Governor Beshear alluded to the fact that if we say the words food insecurity, more people will go hungry because that is not a means of communicating that can effectively deliver the message that Donald Trump is going to starve you and your family.
We're depowering the words. We're taking the real effect of it away because, talking about unhoused individuals, homeless has a bit more of an impact on people.
And it's something that we can understand. And you brought up like how some people view woke as a performance of an act of something that doesn't advance. But I think what is so important that Beshear is pointing out is it's not just that using performative language or performative action doesn't do anything to help. This is actually hurtful in broadening a conversation for people to be able to understand the issues that we're dealing with. We should make them as broad as possible. We should be able to have regular conversations. You don't need to get into nitty-gritty details. And, we've talked about this with how Democrats need to be focusing more on informing, because when you can inform and explain rather than talk down to with words that people don't understand or use, then they're persuadable. When people are curious about learning about how our government works and how you can actually be an actor in the government, not just a bystander, as so many of our elected politicians, a lot of Democrats are, then they can engage. And I think that is just such a great example to be setting from Beshear.
And I think it's just, there's a difference between public decorum and the way that you're interacting with people directly. I feel differently about how certain language is used in legislation than I do about how language is used when somebody is trying to communicate to the American people about an issue that we ought to solve. So I'm not saying talking about unhoused individuals, I'm not saying they need to be called homeless in legislation, but the way that Beshear talks about how inmates call themselves inmates, when I interact with homeless people and I talk to them in New York City and I see them on the street, they call themselves homeless, not unhoused individuals. And so there's a line that we need to toe between the way public decorum is approached and the way that we all interact with each other. And I think a large part of that is the meaning of the word and where you're punching up or down and what you're doing. Because, for example, I think Donald Trump is lame. And I said that something was lame in front of a friend of mine a couple months ago. And this person said, well, we can't say lame because that is a word that is used in a derogatory way against people who have disabilities. Now, I had never even heard of this issue. If I was aware that people with disabilities were unhappy with the use of the word lame, I would not use it. I would certainly not use it to describe one of them. But I think Donald Trump's lame, and I think that if we tie our shoelaces together, trying to make sure that we police every single word we use as though it is going to directly cause harm to the people who it could very well be contorted against, that's a different story. So I think what Beshear is saying is what we say in many other different contexts, which is you have to meet people where they're at and you need to talk to people the way that people do.
And we're having so many conversations right now about language with the Democratic Party. So many on the center or maybe the right of the Democratic Party will say that it's the left who polices language too much. But I've seen a lot of Democrats recently get upset with a certain mayoral candidate who is our nominee for language that he doesn't even use, but isn't directly opposing or will throw a parade condemning. And they say that wholly disqualifies him. And so this conversation around language can't just be a view of the center if we're talking about like what broadens the tent.
People play language police when it's convenient to what they are interested in. It's the same way that people will cancel celebrities for certain things that they let other celebrities get away with because they like the celebrity that they let get away with it. Brad Pitt, if a different celebrity had the very serious and credible accusations of abuse that Brad Pitt did, if a celebrity who wasn't hot in the early 2000s, like Johnny Depp, had as many provable instances of abhorrent behavior as Johnny Depp did, they would never see the light of day again. But because Johnny Depp was hot 25 years ago, people rushed to villainize Amber Heard. And the reason that I say these things is, as I had alluded to, people pick and choose when it's okay to police certain things, but then they make excuses for other people if it serves their interests and if it serves their narrative. And that's what happens when we play language police, which, like you said, moderates do all the time. It's not the far left. If people think that the quote unquote woker people get, the further left they go in policy. And it's like, no, so much of this language that is so trepidatious to sound like the way people talk comes from moderates. It's not like every moderate is down to earth.
Yeah, shooting from the hip and is a man's man. Yeah, it's and
that's so, and that's spiritually kind of similar to the way that Beshear gets treated like a moderate, even though policy wise he is so much closer to a progressive. They treat him like a moderate because he's successful in Kentucky, and they just assume that to be successful somewhere like Kentucky, it must be because you're a moderate and not because those types of policies are actually more popular than people think they are. Alas, here we are. The moderates have successfully convinced so many people that it's actually the people who have more New Deal style policies that are the woke language police. And then, like you said, they play it when it serves their hand. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Jack has to cover breaking news that I'm too lazy to cover. And we will see you all soon.